Okay, I'm being told we can start. Welcome. We have the. I'm being told we can start. This is gonna be fun. This is gonna be fun. Okay. No more echo in the room. Perfect. Thank you very much and welcome to this event at the Foundation for European Progressive Studies. And first of all, congrats. It's Friday morning and we have a full room. So thank you for making the effort. We are today, the 10th of October, is World Mental Health Day. And this is why we decided to do this event on Healthy Minds, Stronger Europe. It's a project that we have been doing with our partners of PAC and IRAP, and we are very pleased to present you the final recommendation, but also to hear from you to see what they mean and how we can work together so that they ultimately become a reality for the millions of Europeans who are suffering for mental disorder and for the millions of Europeans who are not seeking out help or treatment about this. So without further ado, I give the floor to Laszlo Andor, the Secretary General of the Foundation for European Progressive Studies.
Thank you, François. Good morning, dear colleagues, friends. Indeed, on behalf of FEPS, I would like to welcome you all. As you know, FEPS is the think tank of the Social Democratic political family in Brussels. I'm emphasizing this because some of you might be here first time, but I very much hope that this first impression is going to be strong and productive, and you will return on many other occasions to discuss similar issues. For us, the welfare state, what it delivers to people, remains an absolutely central part of the political agenda, and maintaining healthcare for all, improving health standards and health inequality, equal access to the health services is indeed very, very crucial in all countries of Europe, but also beyond. This is very high, and that's also why we thought it would be a good idea to schedule this discussion and presentation of an important study on the World Mental Health Day. I would like to highlight that FEPS is not alone in this endeavor, in this specific project. We joined forces with the Progressive Analyticke Centrum, but also the Institute for Rational Addiction Policy. And we really cherish this partnership because it's not only been very productive and high quality until now, but we trust that through this discussion today, but also beyond, we can maintain this cooperation. I also want to highlight the devotion of the FEPS team. You have already met François Ballat, and you might have interacted with Julia Wild in the preparations and in the logistics. It's the entire FEPS team, including the communication, which is behind the event, also to ensure that you get the most from the program today, and you will feel inspired for further cooperation. Let me tell you that for FEPS, the work on healthcare doesn't start now. In fact, in the European Union, it was a few years ago when, at the time of the pandemic, the concept of the health union emerged. There had already been many different types of unions in this institutional environment. As you know, already in the 1960s, the European Economic Community was a customs union, and then an economic and monetary union, and people started to talk about an energy union, the capital market union, security union, defense union, etc. But it took the pandemic to give rise to this concept of the health union. And FEPS took it very seriously, together with the former Commissioner Andrew Kaitis. Indeed, we published this important book. You have an opportunity to pick up hard copies outside, but it's really a strong volume about what opportunities and perhaps also necessities the European Union is facing in order to develop deeper cooperation, stronger support. Nobody assumes that the EU would take over responsibilities from the member states completely, but if the EU can support, the EU must support in order to upgrade services to ensure that wherever you go in Europe, the welfare states and the health systems can deliver high quality standards. For us, it's also much more than producing studies. Of course, you saw we have published excellent studies which will be subject of the discussion today. But for us, it's also important to deliver this to the table of the decision makers, especially in the European Parliament. In a previous edition of this series, we went to the European Parliament, we met MEPs from Spain, from Czechia, in order to discuss the products of this process. And now I welcome Marc Angel, member of the European Parliament from Luxembourg. And indeed, we will continue to engage with the Parliament, but also whenever there is an opportunity in the European Commission and other EU institutions to ensure that what we discuss does not remain within these walls. Another rendezvous with this subject will take place in Copenhagen at the end of November. In case some of you come from the north or have time in November, we have a semi-annual event which we call to Europe. It always moves to the country of the Council presidency, which is this time Denmark. And as you know, also in Denmark, there is a strong interest in working on mental health, especially for young people. And we will put that on the agenda at the end of November. You already can find information about this on the FEPS website. And this is also for us the planning season for 2026 and sometimes even beyond. And I strongly believe that healthcare, the health union, and specifically mental health will feature strongly because there is a strong interest, there is a lot to say. And if we can achieve something, there's a great added value of the European Union stepping into this area. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your attention. And I give back the floor to François.
Thank you very much, Laszlo, for already setting the scene and highlighting the importance of the work of FEPS so far. You've mentioned also the collective efforts behind that. We have many of our experts today in the room, but also online. We have our three coordinators, Aida, Jana, and Sara, that you will hear from a lot this morning. But I would like also to welcome and thank Thomas Petrček, director at the Progresivni Analyticke Centrum and the lead author of the policy brief that you already have read. Thank you. Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you, François. First of all, I would like to thank you all here in the room and thank all our participants online because they are with us. And I also really appreciate the cooperation with Foundation for European Progressive Studies and Institute for Rational Addiction Policies. And our coordinators, our experts who are with us here and online for their inputs. Because, and here I turn to my personal story, I'm not expert on mental health myself. I teach geopolitics. And you can ask why I'm writing something on mental health. I was minister in 2020, 2021, when COVID-19 changed our lives. And it was the first time I started to think about mental health seriously. As a politician, as a father, as a friend, I saw so many stories where mental health played a central role in our lives, in our social relations. and in our society. And I saw how closely, intimately mental health, our security, our social resilience are intertwined, interconnected. And it made me think about, okay, let's do something on mental health as well, not only on global geopolitics, power rivalries between US, China. Let's look into what can make our society stronger. And let's start maybe with the most intimate thing, and it is what is in our mind, what is in our head, in our heart, and how this individual issue have a broader social context. And I'm really happy for being part of this work this year. Today, it's a culmination of more than 6 months of work with Francois, Julia, Jiří. I have to appreciate their energy and their stamina, because sometimes it was difficult to push us to produce something I think is really coming in the right time. Because after COVID, after period when everybody was talking about mental health, I think we are unfortunately back to the situation when the mental health of young people, elderly, women, workers is no longer a top priority. And I hope that we, with this small project, contribute to bringing mental health back on European Union agenda and member states agenda, because we need action and we need new, fresh ideas what collectively we can do to help people struggling with mental health issues and with stress, challenges to well-being and so on. So thank you very much. I will pass the floor back to Francois, and I hope that you will enjoy the event and especially the breaks, which are the best always.
Thank you so much, Thomas. I think you have convinced us of your expertise, and that's why I will need to invite you again for the next session, because you will be the one leading and moderating the next part of our program, where we will hear from our 3 coordinators. They will walk you through the various recommendations and also hear from you. So Thomas, welcome back, and then I disappear for a while. You want this one?
Works. So now yeah, it's better this one. I would like to start our first interactive part. The main role will be played by our coordinators, by Janka, Sara, and Aida. But we hope that you will play an important role as well, because we want you to interact with our coordinators. Especially we have a chance to interact with our online audience. Julia is putting a number of questions, and we would like to hear from you the inputs and the ideas we can react to. But right now, I would like to give the floor to Jana Michailidu, who will present us with, or she will present the scene for the area we focus on in the research, and it is the interaction between, or intersection between mental health and addictions. So Janka, please.
Thank you, Tomasz. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to work on this important project, which comes at a time not very welcoming efforts in the mental health arena, even though the COVID pandemic showed us how important it is. Can I have the presentation? Thank you.
I will give you like
Okay.
3 minutes now, and with the questions from the
Oh, okay. So first, let me maybe introduce you to why are we even talking about addictions and how it is interconnected with mental health issues. Should I just press? Okay, thank you. So the mental health topic is important because it impacts a big part of our communities. 1 in 6 EU citizens experiences some form of mental health condition. These figures can even be greater because not all people can access help, not all people search help, not all people are really invited to participate in the mental health care system. When we look at the numbers regarding budgets, mental ill health costs the EU member states more than 4% of their GDP. This is not only from the care system, but this is also due to them missing on work, them not participating in the economy. So there are direct and indirect costs that climb up to 4% of GDP. How it is interconnected with the addiction topic is that 60 to 80% of people who suffer from substance use disorder are not people who don't suffer with their mental health in some capacity. The people that have diagnosed substance use disorder most of the time have some pre-existing conditions that make it possible for them to have these problems in the first place. When we think about substance use, when we think about behavioral addictions, when we think about addictive products as a whole, it's not so common that people interact with these products in a really negative way. When we talk about risky addiction, people who go into risky addiction, which means it impacts their life in a very serious way. It impacts their lives at work, at their relationships, at school. These people, most of the time, have some pre-existing mental health conditions. They have trauma, they can have undiagnosed mental health issues. They are mainly trying to escape suffering. That's the point why they become addicted in a way that influences their life in the negative way. So this is why treating mental health and addictions separately is not a good idea, because they are intertwined very, very much. Okay, now I would like, it's the morning, so I would like you to have some physical exercise and also to interact with the presentation. So I would like to ask you to raise your hand if you think that EU drug strategy should also include alcohol. Because, okay, okay, I see we have a very informed audience here. Okay, how many of you think that EU addiction strategy should not focus only on substance use? That we should also take into account behavioral addictions? Okay, okay, I'm preaching to the choir. Okay, okay. So
I'd like to also add that our online participants are interacting with us, and just Janka, to your question, I want to comment that most our online participants see all of them as highly relevant.
okay, so I am preaching to the choir also online. Thank you for your activity. And as it is now, the EU drug strategy only focuses on illicit drug use. Almost exclusively, we see them being concerned with cannabis, opioids, methamphetamines, and only the drugs that are on the illegal market, mostly. But when we look at the numbers, alcohol causes over 250,000 deaths annually. Also, when we look at the behavioral addictions, gambling is a massive industry with a turnover around 90 billion euros per year. But only a few member states, around 5 member states, have very intensive harm reduction strategies in these behavioral parts of the addiction topic. When we look at the digital addictions, which I will be talking a little more of later, it is even worse because they are, for now, mainly absent from the strategy in the first place. Now I would want to invite you to interact with your neighbor. I want you to talk to each other. Please think of some group of people that you imagine could be marginalized and could be facing different barriers in the system of care. Maybe you can think of a woman with a child. Maybe you can think of a LGBTQIA person. Maybe you can think of a person experiencing homelessness. What do you think they are facing that a normal person in the society is not facing when they're trying to reach care, when they're trying to reach help for their addiction? So I invite you to discuss it, and then maybe when you come up with something, you can talk to us back. Okay, thank you very much for engaging in the discussion. Is there anyone who would want to present us with the findings and with their impression of the issue? You can state which group of people you were thinking about and which barriers you think they face, in addition to the barriers that are systemically in place.
So we were from Czech Republic and from Austria, and we discussed how the refugees and people with migration background can have limited access to healthcare in general, and specifically to mental health care services, and specifically services which are targeted on people with this type of experience and probably traumatic experience in case of refugees, but it can be also with anyone with migration status. So not only the healthcare institutions, my colleague had a good idea that actually even the different institutions and schools may not have specific targeted services, and that would be great to have greater awareness of this issue.
Yeah, it's brilliant. That's exactly the case. Is there someone with a different group they were talking about?
Even though we came down late, we're just discussing together a very good topic of this. And I'm an Indian living in Germany, a professor with all this, and I like this topic. We're addressing about mental health with refugees, working place. What about the teenagers who are just 18 and 19 and they start to work? They say all the time, you say the boys can't cry, and what about we are addressing mothers, children? What about exactly they're 18 and they start to work, 19 they start to work. They don't know, they are all the pandemic children who have studied online. So my question here is, what about these kids, exactly 18 and 19? That's what brought me here. Like we are speaking adults, we are speaking about old people, there's a hospice, there's a palliative care. And suddenly teenage means you suddenly start to do the health education on sexual needs, and the main question, digital dopamine. So this is why I come here, because 18, 19 is an age where they're just coming out of their cradle. And most of the students are coming to Europe, even from France to Germany, Germany to France. And the trust issues, anxiety and panic, like medications, as I entered, you were speaking about legalization of drugs like cannabis and others. How many of us know what they are taking? Like in Asian countries, they take a cough syrup to sleep because it brings sleep. So even in Europe, we don't know. So this would be one of the addressing question which I want about exactly the 18 and 19. The 18, 19, 20, 21. So that's the question.
Yeah, thank you. Youth is another group which faces difficult barriers in the system of mental health and also in the topic of addictions. Thank you for your,
I was discussing with Thomas, and it's not only to what group you belong to, but it's also where you live and in what area you live. If you're a trans person in Hungary, your mental stress is much higher than if you're a trans person in Spain. But also if you are a single mom in a rural area where there is no infrastructure, no public services, no kindergartens, your stress is much bigger than if you're in a city which is run by people who care for public infrastructure and public services. So all this also has a big influence, and I think it's not only the group. And then Thomas quite rightly referred also to the importance of Enrico's letters right to stay in an area, and that we need to invest in public services in areas, because this also is prevention.
Yeah, I agree totally. The socioeconomic parameters and also the regional development is very important in this issue.
And if I can wrap up our comments online, we have, for example, youth communities, especially some facing behavioral challenges, women without access to childcare, public care, autistic people, and also we shouldn't forget about kids who lost their parents or one or both parents. But I think in general, like households, families with facing the loss of their relatives, I think are facing these challenges. And one thing, following what Mark said, groups, people who do not access to support system, public services, are facing higher risk in general.
Yeah, thank you very much for your live interaction here and also online. I think we can get back to the presentation. And because you are so informed and so compassionate, I will just run through my thoughts on the topic. What are the specific barriers that different groups of people are facing in this system? And maybe I will also skip the digital addictions, which are an emerging topic, but Aida will be talking about it, so I want to leave enough room to the other panelists here. I will now go into what can we do about it to make the system better. For the people that are in it, but also for the society as a whole. So our recommendation is, first, we need to engage with prevention in evidence-based manner. Still, in a lot of member states, the prevention efforts are fear-based, are information-based, but we know for a lot of years from evidence that this does not work. We need to have life skill programs. We need to provide the young people with meaningful relationships, with valuable experiences in their free time, so that they are not up for trying different addictive products. But we also need to think about how the mental health impacts their choices in life. When we have mental health care that is not really accessible for the youth, when we have youth that have problematic environment at home, they are always at a bigger risk of developing risky addiction. We need to think about harm reduction products. We need to think about harm reduction services. These are services that cut the costs of the addiction issues. We need to have needle syringe exchange programs because they are important measure in the infection control. And also we need to have care that is integrated. We need to stop doing separated care service programs. So a lot of the times a person goes into detox program, into treatment for addiction. They make them go off the drug of their choice, but then they return to their environment. They don't have a living, they don't have housing, they can't really compete on the work market. And so our treatment programs need to be integrated and need to provide these people a way to return to the society and a way to return to normal life. Also, I think it's important to say that stigmatization of people who use drugs, which comes from the prohibitive narrative, is a very big issue, and it is preventing people from seeking help, and it is preventing people from returning to society and live their full life. Apart from these recommendations, which are really public health focused, prevention and harm reduction are also cost effective. We know that. We know that every euro we invest in evidence-based prevention comes back to the budget 4 times. Some studies say also 7 times. We see almost halving of the hospitalization costs when we have integrative care, when we provide the people with a way to return to society, return to work, return to housing. So what we need really is an integrative EU addiction agenda. We need to be leading in this because there's nobody else who will do it. We need to embed harm reduction strategies in these action plans, in these documents. We need to fund integrated care initiatives, and we need to also think about the patient experience. We need to invite the people that are suffering with the issue to the table when we are drafting these documents and when we are drafting these strategies. Also, as we've seen from your reactions, as we've seen from the online reactions, we need to be intersectional in approaching this issue, because there are doubling stigmatizations for different groups of people that are trying to access care. Okay, and this is maybe more of the same. So I will thank you very much for your attention and for your input also.
Bravo.
Thank you, Janka. Thank you for your excellent presentation, and I really also thank to all of you for engaging. It was really great. Carry on. Now I would like to invite Sara, who coordinated the work of our team, of our experts on mental health at the workplace, which is where we spend a lot of time, especially we old.
Hello everyone, I'm very pleased to be here, and I would like to welcome you also on our part in terms of the mental health in the workplace. So, as Thomas said, workplace is the place where we spend most of our time, or at least great chunk of our everyday life. And so the environment that we function, both in terms of atmosphere, relationships, and any other ways that we function within it, impacts our moods, impacts our self-esteem, and impacts how we function in other spheres of our life. So I don't need to see which one. Which one do I press? Enter, I suppose? No. Arrows. Okay, so before we start, I would like to ask both you in the room and also online audience. I know that online audience doesn't have an access to it, but I would like you to answer some of the questions just to see where we at. But as far as I have seen in the previous talk, we have very informed audience. So I think why it's not working. Okay. So first of all, there should be QR codes for the poll. So if you just turn around on the walls. Oops. On a scale from 1 to 5, how supported do you feel regarding your mental health at work? That will also warm us up a bit after sitting, I suppose. Then we have the question, if you've ever taken a time off. Sorry for that. Here's the IT mind, so if you could help us with that. Yeah, we can actually, as we are waiting for everything else, we can kind of even talk openly about it. So, in general, how do you feel you're supported in your workplace? Maybe any of you have any policies or any sort of initiatives in your workplace that supports your mental health, or is it more distant in a way? It should work now for the...
Okay. May I or?
Go ahead.
So, thank you very much. It's a topic that I care a lot about, as I've been through a burnout, so that's quite important. I would say that it's both a risk and a benefit, which is flexi time. So flexi time can be really helpful for mental health, but at the same time, it's a risk because you are flexible, so you can stay more, but officially and start later. But officially, then the day after, you should then start later. But sometimes we don't. So that's flexi time, I would say, can be really helpful, but at the same time a risk.
Anybody else would like to share? Indeed, flexi time is something that we've all benefited from, predominantly due to pandemics. But at the same time, it can be quite challenging to manage the blurring boundaries of work and life. So we have the first question and the results from it. So as we can see that majority don't really have any support in place, or it's sort of ambivalent in terms of the policies. In terms of the spectrums, the more sort of radical spectrums, not at all and very much, we have relatively equal distribution. And then the second question? No, from the poll? Does it work? Yeah, that works. Okay, so we have it here. Have you ever taken time off from work due to stress or burnout? We have relatively even distribution. However, there is one or two more answers towards yes, we have. And the third question doesn't have any answers. So the third question, I guess we can also use it as a sort of reflection, which I'll prompt quite a lot of reflections today towards you. Oh, we do have it. So, oh gosh, I can't see it. So if you're struggling mentally, how comfortable would you feel telling that to your manager? 2, very comfortable, somewhat comfortable. So also a bit of discomfort, but perhaps some personal features as well. But then not at all comfortable and not really comfortable. So considering the specific characteristic of us as audience who is quite informed and interested in the topic, and we are aware of both mental health and the importance of mental health and well-being, I think this is quite important results to show. But as we can come back now to my presentation. You move slides and I move slides, okay. So back, please. So let me start with a story. Imagine Anna. For the purpose of our presentation, this is Anna generated with AI, so no personal image has been heard. Anna is a 30-year-old project manager who lives in Warsaw. She's bright, driven, and she always meets her deadlines, as we all try to do in our work life. But lately she's been struggling with sleep. Her workload feels endless, and even when she is off the clock, her minds keep racing, and she keeps trying to settle it in her head to what to do next to meet her deadlines. But she doesn't talk about it much, so she worries it might make her look weak, also in terms of the corporate environment. So she keeps going. She wants to prove herself. She's telling herself that this is just a busy period. Didn't we have it all at work? But this busy period never really ends. And so what happens is that her productivity starts to drop, and so does her confidence. Her manager notices she misses the deadlines, but the manager doesn't notice the invisible workload that she has to carry. Now, sounds familiar? Anna's story isn't rare. So, in fact, if we look at Euronews survey, nearly 40% of European workers are at high risk of poor mental health. And if we think about it for a moment, that almost 2 out of every 5 people who you work with. So the data shows that younger workers, women, those who have lower financial security, and those who work in a sedentary lifestyle or work style are particularly vulnerable. And for employers, that translates into lower productivity and higher costs of running organization. But putting all the economic profits behind, what's important is that this shows that the way we organize and support and provide support needs to fundamentally change. So today what I would like to talk about is how the change might look like. So what kind of policy and practices can ensure that people like Anna and whoever else knows the story don't just survive at work, but actually thrive with it. So some of the background notes Jana has already given you in terms of the data and numbers, so I will perhaps skip that, if we manage to do that. And what I would like to focus on is not only the numbers, but also the sort of phenomenons that we witness. So it's not on poor mental health does not only affect our productivity in a way that we don't tend to work, that we have higher level of absenteeism, but presentism, so working while we are not able to work, while we should rest and we should take time to recover, but also higher rate of workers turnover for employers, and also early retirement. So looking at the European Agency for Safety and Health at Work results, both stress, depression, and anxiety are the second most important most reported work-related problem at the EU in the EU member states, and really that affects about a quarter of all the workforce. And it's not only to do with people like Anna, who is young, white European, but it affects to every single group in a more or less cases. So in a previous discussion, we had a plea for young workers. Indeed, they're also vulnerable. We had also older workers who struggle with changing working environment and rapid digitalization on the workplace. We also have women and gender diverse people whose in some countries the working environment is not adequately adjusted to their needs, but also men, as we focus a lot on vulnerable population, men in terms of their expectations and the sort of fear from stigma are also at risk. Okay, so clearly formatting is also not on our side. The question I would have for you, from your experience in the workplace and the challenges that you may have faced yourself or heard before, if you could design one policy that could be implemented tomorrow, let's be realistic, what would it be? Right to disconnect, you can go.
The right to disconnect.
Mm-hmm. We already have that policy. Yeah, I know. I will come back to it.
The enforcement of the right to disconnect.
Perhaps monitoring how to enforce that right to disconnect?
We also have a comment online that social equality at the workplace is important.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we do have the right to disconnect, which I will address in my recommendations shortly, and social equality, which indeed makes our working environment just livable. Pardon?
Digital literacy, transparency,
Indeed, this is like a black box that we have to tackle every day because it's changing.
Sarah, can I? I think also employers supporting their employees in lifelong learning is missing. We don't have a comprehensive workplace support for people to learn new skills in order to reduce the stress from new expectations, as mentioned, for example, from large deployment of digital technologies, AI, and so on.
Indeed, literacy and the willingness to address the challenges should come from every side. So as much as I was focusing so far from the employee's perspective, but employers' role, both, employers and trade unions also, or involvement in all the players on the ground is equally important. So going back to money a little bit. Sorry.
Sorry, it was just that oftentimes people have too many pressures also because of understaffing. So people end up with too many tasks for a human being to support. So as you said, unions have a big role there on the workplace to ensure that there is monitoring on people's capabilities, and there is a possibility for everyone to actually do what they need to do.
Indeed.
And we received one more policy recommendation, pension certainty, really guarantees for people for their pension age.
Mm-hmm. Well, security in all forms is something that we should have. So coming back to my presentation, in terms of looking at the money and coming back to more kind of economic perspective, I'll come back to the human base as well. If we look at whether it really makes sense to talk about mental health and how much cost return it involves. If we look at OECD data from 2022, €1 spent on prevention in the workplace yields up to €4 in reduced mental health costs. Well, if we add up the amount of money that are circulated, that is quite a high level. But then it's not also about money, it's also about initiatives. And I think that connects with the lifelong learning, but also with other methods to upskill, but also to ensure that we as workers are able to keep up with changing working environment. So it's not only to do with mental health initiatives in the workplace as of targeting only mental health, but the ones that would allow employees to increase their leadership, their management style, the job design, that would have better effects on the mental health and initiatives, the mental health initiatives alone. So if we look at the psychosocial safety climate in the organization, then the better the environment in the organization, the lower burnout rates and lower absenteeism. So looking at really the problem of mental health in the workplace, well, we don't talk about anything new. It has been addressed previously in European framework. In the previous surveys, that has been acknowledged in terms of the psychosocial risks, but only some of the companies, 30%, managed to place them in the workplace. COVID-19 also further exacerbated that strain. So also through remote work, through digital fatigue, and constant connectivity that we now yelled for right to disconnect. So mental health is not only imperative in a way, but it's also a strategy to connect both economic outcomes and the performance of the company, individual well-being. Could you move the slides? So we need to approach mental health in the workplace from the right-based perspective of an individual, because psychosocial well-being is also psychosocial physical safety. So it's not, we should treat both equally. As much as we look in the companies, in the workplaces, as much as we look at the health and safety, we should treat mental health in the same way. So we should do that through psychosocial risk assessment, treat mental health as part of the protocol, safety protocol, enforceable standards that would be universal throughout the companies, but also include social dialogue that would include trade unions, employers, and policy makers. But the solutions that should be implemented should be also sector specific, because different sectors require different action. We should also look at the raising awareness and accommodate diverse needs, whether that will be physical or neurological in a way. Nurturing organizational culture, but also confidentiality that would allow workers to feel safe in their workplace. Through that, work could be empowered, and these should be based on the evidence-based intervention. Next. So, because we are running low on time, I would like, rather than turning to your neighbors, I would like to leave that as your personal reflection. So, which of these issues should be most urgent in the context that you work in? But I will leave that, and if you skip to the next, I would like to present you some of the key recommendations that we have. Next. So, first of all, I think we've heard that enough in the room. Enforce the right to disconnect. And indeed, this is something that has been in place, but yet is constantly ignored. So, but should not only be done by our individual practices, but also ensure the manageable workload from off-hours protection for workers from off-hours contact, understaffing and realistic deadlines. Next. Recognize and address that technostress is a psychological risk. So, looking at the workplaces that we're dealing with nowadays, the amount of ICT overload, digital adaptation pressure, interruption, digital noise, and the complexity of the systems that we deal with, and digital surveillance as well, is something that should be addressed. Next. Create neurodiversity affirming workplaces. So we all have different needs, we all work differently, we all are productive in a different way. And so employers should recognize that as a natural that all the variations are natural human variations, and so the workplaces should be adjusted to it. Next. Balance sounds good. But through balance, we have an acronym that comes with building awareness and literacy, both for employees and workers, assessing psychological risks, leadership and labor participation, accommodation and accessibility of different rights, navigation and reintegration for those who suffered burnout. If they return to the same working environment, they need infrastructure to be supported. Confidentiality and culturally safeguard, and evaluation for equity. Next. Promote intergenerational inclusion, and that applies both to young workers who really who need mentorship throughout their early career stage, but also for those who are elderly and who suffer with changing working environments. Next. And tackle the mental health burden stemming from unpaid care work. And I would say that I have been working on the topic for over 10 years, and I know this is not the earliest work, and it has been in the public debate for years. And it kind of want to make me say, Europe, really? But yes, indeed. So many years after it, we still have a burden from unpaid work that does affect mental health. And we do need work-life balance directives that are comprehensive and are covered not only the moment of leaving the job, but also further implications, like, for example, pension entitlement. So rather than summarizing, next, I will leave the list of recommendations. And for those of you, once we finish our event, I would like you, Julia will give away the cards next. And I would like you to write down one takeaway, those in-person audience and the one on the audience online. If there's one thing I would do differently after today in terms of your well-being and mental health in the workplace, what would it be? There's a wall outside that I would like you to stick it to. And then the online participators also have the moral to write down on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for excellent presentation. I will give you a few moments to distribute the stickers. And I would like to now invite Aida to share with us the ideas and recommendations that have been produced during the discussions on how digital technologies influence mental health and what can we do with it. So Aida, welcome and please take the floor.
Thank you for the invitation, and I'm very pleased to be here and to talk to you today about a very important topic. Yes, thank you. Now, you are starting at the end of my presentation when we are not done yet. So, yes, I'm going to talk about digital technologies and mental health, which is a very important topic. Our lives have changed very much the last 15 years in all areas, at work, at home, and also our children's lives are changing. So digital technologies have great potential. They connect us. They are making many things easier for us, but they also have some inherent risks. And what we have been seeing in the last years is that digital technologies pose mental health risk, and especially for young people who are engaging the most with these technologies. And how is this so? Next. It's because today we are living in the age of attention economy. And what's attention economy? Well, that is, today companies are making money on or capturing our attention. As humans, we can only concentrate or focus on one thing at a time. Like the multitasking is a myth. If we want to do things really good, we have to focus 100%. So companies like Snapchat, Meta, and so on are capturing our attention, and because the ones who capture human attention also make the most money, because they can show the most advertising, and they can also collect the most data. And to do that, they use a number of different tricks and technologies. And next. And nothing is accidental. So just when you take up your phone, just the colors are are chosen intentionally. So if you look at those icons, if you remember, like Instagram and YouTube used to be in very like natural colors, and today they are more bright colors. And this is because these colors are signaling to our brain, this is exciting, you must check it. Like a red color with the notification is signaling, oh, you know, you are going to miss out on something. So these companies are using our biology against us. And when you take your phone, your finger will automatically go to your drug of choice, if it's Snapchat, Instagram, or whatever it is for you. And when you are pressing on this icon, and usually people go to check something like for a couple of seconds, and I don't know about you, but most people experience that they will stay there for 10, 20 minutes. And if I would ask you to go in and check your screen time, probably you will be surprised that your screen time is much higher than you expect it to be. Next. And this is because when we first have pressed into the app, then there is a number of different mechanisms that are used to keep us hooked on this app. One of them is the endless scrolling. If you remember, the older of you of the audience can remember that Facebook before in time, there was like an end. You could see what your friends had posted, and then it was the end, and yet you had to come back later. But when they removed that, and it became like endless, what they found is that people would engage 50% longer of the time. So when you go in, the endless scrolling is keeping you hooked on the app. Another very important mechanism is the unpredictable reward. And this is something that both gaming and social media are sharing with gambling. Gambling we do regulate by law. You have to be 18 because especially the young brains are very vulnerable. So unpredictable rewards come back from the 40s and 50s, where Skinner has been doing some experiments with rats. And if the rat would press a button and there will always be food, then the rat will learn, well, if I'm hungry, I will press, and and then the rat can use the time to explore its environment. But if the button is manipulated and there's sometimes food and sometimes not, but not in a clear pattern, the only thing the rat can think about is the button. And that's the same thing in gaming, where like loot boxes, where you get unpredictable rewards, unpredictable skins, for example. The number of these loot boxes is actually determining how addictive a game is. And some countries have been regulated by a law, like Belgium and Netherlands. The same principle you have met on social media, because when you open it, usually you will see some video that you are very much interested in, cats or cars or whatever it is. And then after that, there will be a number of not that engaging videos, because it's just, it's producing this effect that you get a reward and then you have to wait and hope that soon I will find something interesting as well. So that's how we keep stuck on these platforms. And next. And it all comes down to the reward system, because we as humans love rewards, and just like a small comments, small messages, or for the children, especially streaks in the Snapchat, are really keeping them stuck on these platforms. Next. And so this is actually resulting in that all of us, adults and children, use much more time than we actually want to on these platforms. So there was like a Danish poll, and every second adults want to reduce their screen time, but find it difficult to do so. Also children, like 40% of children aged 9 to 14 think that they themselves and their friends are using too much time on the phone or screen. And half of them have considered using less screen time. If we look at studies where people actually try to reduce the screen time, most of them find it very, very difficult to do so. Yes, thank you. Next. And when we look at social media addiction, which is not an official diagnosis, I will assume it will become it at some point. But this was also like a large poll in Denmark, where these are adults, 16 plus. 2.3% of the participants actually screen for a clinical addiction, but 60% of the population have some symptoms. So most of us will feel the urge to check our phone and be connected. And this is also especially true for the young people, and it also goes along with an increased risk for depression, poor mental well-being, and loneliness. And next. This is especially problematic for young people and children who have not fully developed brains yet, and especially their inhibitory control is not developed yet. And we can see that there was both an American and Danish study that around 25% of children age 11 till 17 show moderate to heavy the symptoms of addiction. And in all other areas, we are protecting children from addiction because we know that if the brain is rewired at a young age, it's much easier to become addicted, but it also poses a risk to be more susceptible to other addictions later on in life. Next. And we also have gaming disorder, which is now an official diagnosis in the new diagnostic system that the World Health Organization is using in ICD-11. And it shares some features with gambling disorder. And many gaming disorder is also many young people, young men, especially who play gaming, who are gaming, they actually are going over to gambling because many of the features are the same. Next. Yes, and so the result today is when we look at the screen time, I won't ask you to check your own screen time, but you can do that afterwards. But when we look at teens, there are several studies showing that teenagers have 5 hours a day only social media. This is TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram. So gaming, Netflix and so on, it's on top of that. And in some countries, like in Denmark, they also have like around 4 hours screen time at school. So it's like for many young people, it's above 12 hours a day. We also know from research that around more than 3 hours on social media a day doubles the risk for anxiety and depression and other mental health issues. Next. And especially the inhibitory control is not fully developed in children. It's not normal that a child cannot wait, a baby cannot wait for anything. And by the time you are 3 and 5 or 10, you should be able to wait a little longer. However, many of the features that are used by children and adolescents are actually working against that. They are training young people to get the immediate reward, and it becomes much harder to wait. We can also see from longitudinal studies that young people, like high school students, when they are followed for 2 and 5 years, and if they have increasing screen time, they actually show ADHD-like symptoms because their attention is being trained that something has to happen all the time. Next. If we look at the harmful effects of screen activities, of course, not all screens are bad. There are, but unfortunately, especially young people are mostly using not so good stuff. It's mostly gaming and social media. So we have like 2 categories. The one is like we have like direct harmful effects, and this is for the risk of retraining the reward system. If you from a young age get used to that, you have to get a fast reward all the time. And from studies, we can show that this delays the impulse inhibition, but also concentration. But also we have the harmful content, which we also protect children and adolescents from. When we look at the movie industry, we have like which age is appropriate for a violent or sexual content. But there's actually no regulation online on this kind of things. And then also we have the opportunity costs and the indirect harmful effects. And these are when children are being kept online for many hours a day, then this time is going away from other important activities. Then they are not sleeping, they are not being together with their friends, they are not doing sports. So it's really affecting them in many negative ways. Next. Another really serious issue is that if we look at the social media, TikTok, Instagram, then we know from different studies that they are actually pushing really harmful content. So because harmful content creates engagement, when young people see something that shocks them, they will stay more online. And so they have been pushing self-harm content, depressive content, violence and suicidal ideation. Also in Denmark, there is like a team for self-harm, and they have done like a small study, and what they have found is that every second young person who is coming to them has been inspired on social media to do so. Next. And now I will show you a little movie about, I hope it's working.
Well, remember, There's a box in the corner over there with all the pornographic material that's ever been made in the world, even the really weird stuff that could scar you for life. I'm trusting you not to look in there, okay?
Okay.
Feelings are for losers.
Oh, and this guy's gonna be in your corner all night just randomly spewing out hateful things. Just ignore him, okay? While I'm thinking of it, there's an order form on your desk where you can purchase illegal drugs. The mean girls from your school are gonna be standing there talking about you all night. And this Russian hacker's gonna keep asking for your password.
I'm not hacker. Amazon customer service.
Just need you to ignore him, okay?
Love you, buddy. We ask too much of our kids when we give them a smartphone. Let's change the norm. Together.
Maybe we go around the room and share social security numbers.
Join the movement at smartphonefreechildhoodus.com.
So this movie is from a parenting organization, but it really illustrates beautifully that we are allowing our children access to stuff we will never allow in the like a real analog world. We will protect them from drugs, from sexual approaches, from so many different things. But then when they're at around age 8, we are handing them a smartphone and they can access everything, which they also do. And if they haven't done it themselves, for sure their friends will show them how to go there. So it's really, really important that we also consider how exposure to this kind of content is affecting children and adolescents' mental health, which it is. Next. The Save the Children organization has done a poll last year, interviews with young people, and they have found that 3 out of 4 children and young people have experienced some kind of digital violation only in the last year, which if we look at the last 5 years, almost everyone has experienced something. And what are they seeing online? I will show you a little and a second video, which is from a Danish documentary where they have interviewed 50 children, what they are seeing online. It's the other video. It's in Danish, but it's with subtitles.
Der er mange af mine veninder, der har fået det. Jeg tror hellere, jeg vil sige, at der måske er 1 eller 2 af mine venner, der ikke har fået det. Altså, at blive truet til at sende nogle billeder.
Jeg har aldrig talt med mine forældre omkring, hvad jeg ser på internettet.
Der er en fyr, som truer med at skyde sig selv. Han har sat telefonen sådan, som man kan se det hele.
På TikTok, der dukker det bare op. Først så jeg en manden voldtage en død krop og skalle mig af og sådan noget.
Første gang har jeg måske været 12-13 år. Og så sad han sådan og rørte ved sig selv.
Du tænder din kamera og begynder at spille smart med din pistol. Og så skyder du dig selv.
Hvor der så bliver sprøjtet hjernemasse og blod ud over det hele.
Hvad fanden er det her? Hvad skete der lige?
Det er ikke sådan, at man skal... Man tænker, at sit barn ser på internettet.
Yeah, so it's really pretty shocking that most teenagers, most 16 years old, have seen some kind of content. If we look like at horror movies, we will have there's like be 16 plus. This is not a horror movie. This is like real stuff they are accessing, and I think we are only going to see the consequences of this in the next years, because also a study has shown that around 50% of the children react like straight away with not being anxious, not being able to sleep, having pain in the stomach. But the other 50%, I think it's just like a matter of time when they are going to show some kind of symptoms, because it's not normal to be exposed to this kind of stuff often. Next, thank you. So if we look at the impact of screen time, and there has been a lot of literature, and it's just like new studies are coming out every day, we can see that it's impacting children on an emotional level, like this kind of stuff, or being asked to send naked pictures, cyberbullying, and so on. There is also studies now which I also focus in my own research, is how especially the fast-paced videos on social media are affecting our ability to focus, because schools are observing, teachers are observing that many children have difficulty concentrating. Yes. Yes. And then we have, like, on the social level, that children and adolescents especially are being less together physically with their friends. Sleep is affected very much in all age groups. We also know that it is connected to doing less sports, but also with the body and increased obesity, but also actually nearsighted. More children are being nearsighted and having, like, back problems. Next. So, and there has been a study here 2 months ago, which 100,000 young people have been analyzed, and what they found out is that smartphones before the age of 13 means a poorer mental health when you are around 18 to 20 years old. Those young people who had the phone early, they have more suicidal thoughts, feeling disconnected from reality, they have poorer emotional regulation and a lower self-esteem. And when they look into the causes, next, one of the major causes was actually early access to social media and all this kind of stuff. Their cyberbullying, disturbed sleep, and weakened relationships in the family. So, next. And another thing that we should think about is how, you know, this meaningless, this like flood of videos children and adolescents are watching is affecting the brain. And one very popular term they themselves are using in brain rot, and it has also been elected for the Oxford Word of the last year, which means that your cognitive functions are declining, because when you just take in so much information, actually your brain cannot process it. And many experience they are being overwhelmed, but also having difficulty to learn. Next. Yes. So then we will come, this was like the background. Why is it important that we have some recommendation in this area, which is very under-regulated? So one of them is actually the right for cognitive integrity. This has been adopted by some countries, like Chile has it in its constitution, and also some US states are considering it. But actually it's the right that we are have to feel and think and decide freely without being manipulated by other companies that are stealing our time or trying to sell us something. And this is especially true for children and adolescents. Next. And this is really a very pressing issue that we need to restrict manipulative and addictive design for minors, which we do when it comes to gambling. We don't say, well, they just need digital literacy in gambling. Let us teach how they are going to gamble, and then we will send them and do not get addicted. They can't do that because they just don't have the biological, they're not biologically there yet. So we also need to train clinicians on digital risk. I'm working in child psychiatry. It is not something that is a norm, and we need to ask what children are experiencing, because their lives are digital mainly. Also, and when we look into different issues like self-harm, eating disorders, anxiety, and so on. Next. Also, we have the requirement for age verification that children shouldn't be able to enter some of these platforms, which are not safe by design. So Denmark has just actually proclaimed that this is going to be effective soon for all children below 15 are not going to be able to enter social media. Next. We need to inform parents as well. I have met doctors who are now starting to, at the check-up baby visits, to ask their parents, how much eye contact are you having with your child? And not only, are you smoking in the house, but also because many of these cartoons and stuff children are seeing at a young age have a strong connection with their development, language development, attention development, and other developmental issues. Next. We also need to regulate mental health technology. I don't know if there is someone here in the audience, but it has become very popular to use ChatGPT as your personal therapist. What people are not thinking about is that they are sharing their most intimate thoughts and emotions, which then are being sold to companies that can target you and sell you stuff. So this is really one pressing issue, because many young people are using AI as AI companions or therapists or even boyfriend or girlfriend, and many of these apps actually are allowed to sell this data, you know, to marketing companies. Next. We also need to require schools to implement clear school policies. Some countries have done that. The Netherlands have done that last year, and what they are seeing is a better concentration, better social environment, and better results in school. And we also need to help parents to establish joint agreements, like to delay children's access. The burden shouldn't be placed on the parents. I really want to stress that the burden should be on the companies, because when it comes to toys, pharmaceuticals, and so on, all of them have to prove that their product is safe before enrolled. But when it comes to digital technologies, they can just roll whatever out to millions of kids, and then we have to prove that it's harmful, which is like the wrong way. Next. Just a quick and really need to be look at, you know, this is a very common picture. Social life is when we are social, but not really social, hyper connected, but on a very superficial level. And next, we can see from statistics that young people are being less together with their friends physically, and they are also being more lonely, which is also a very big risk factor for mental health issues. Next. So we really also need to address that. Next. And this is by promoting more of digital literacy. I mean, and for me to see, it's really a combination between digital literacy and regulation. And we also need to help them, you know, funding accessible after-school leisure activities, because today for young people it's not normal just to go and knock on your neighbor's door as it used to be when I was a child or you were children. So we really need to help them to connect, in the real world. Next. And we also need to have education, like people who are doing tech degrees, they should have some digital ethics, learning about dark patterns and what should be done and not, what is ethical to do and not to do. Next. And we also need to coordinate across sectors, which has also been mentioned in some of the previous recommendation. And I think this is like almost the next. We also need to address technology facilitated violence and recognize that, you know, cyberbullying, deep fakes, and so on are very much violence, just like violence in the analog world. Next. And we also need to combat disinformation and train critical training, especially now in the age of AI, where we really we can't know, is it this real or not. Next. Yes, so that was about our recommendations, and I will end with there's more to life than staring at a small screen, and we also really need to do something about that. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Aida. Before passing the floor back to Francois, or maybe I can take the role of Francois now and invite you for a coffee break. I might learn from Aida that maybe we can leave our phones here and engage in real social interaction. So you are invited, please. I would like to ask you to be back in half an hour because we have other excellent speakers who will share their ideas with us. And again, I would like to thank you for your active engagement and participation with our exercises, even though sometimes we will see into the technical side of it in the future. Thank you.
So I'm from Europe. Working with organizations to understand basically what we are doing recommendations for schools or the workplace. And between our assumptions was that they would be also looking at how accommodating the workplace for mental health. There's also another pre-assumption. My question. We have seen a bit like not a lot of it, and I don't know if you came across maybe vocational school or vocational education. But there's a lot of the population of young people who end up in vocational education that come from a specific socioeconomic, but also with learning difficulties. There's a lot of young people
bubble, and therefore I'm so happy to be here, because it's so important of us legislators to get out of this bubble, meet academia and civil society representatives, because it's together that we can shape policies. Indeed, I could be very brief now and say, well, the European Union has no competences in health, so also no competences in mental health. I could state Article 168(7), which says responsibility for healthcare is attributed to member states, so not to EU, and I could leave the room. But that's not true. If you dig deep enough into treaties, you find a lot of things where we can act, and of course, it's like with everything. If there is a problem Europeans face, we as European Union and as European Parliament, we cannot be silent. And then we have to dig into the articles and we will find something. And let me go back a few years ago. I was very active in the conference on the future of Europe, where we had 2 years of discussions with civil society and with 900 randomly selected citizens. And 1/3 of these citizens were young people aged between 16 and 25. And health, that was during COVID also, health was one of the topics, one of the 9 big topics of that. And so one of the outcomes of the conference was that we need in the European Union a broader understanding of health. And the first measure recommended by that working group of the citizens together with civil societies and politicians was improve the understanding of mental health issues. So you see, it has to be on the European agenda, whatever the treaties say. And as I said, if you dig deep in the treaties, you find a lot of places where you can act on the protection of public health, even on single market articles, social policy, because as we see, everything is intertwined, and especially now with our competences on regulating tech regulation, as we heard from Aida's presentation, it's very important to act as a European Union. So we should not shy away. Good news is also that we have a very active intergroup of mental health in the European Parliament. What is an intergroup? An intergroup is a grouping of members of the European Parliament from different political groups who focus on one policy area, and there's 2 fantastic co-chairs. It's Maria Walsh from Ireland and Alex Agius Saliba from Malta, and they have a lot of members and they're very active and they're working together with you and also academia, and of course I've sent them this wonderful study already, and I hope they will treat it. So we have to never shy away talking about this. We have to fight also. I'm in the AFCO committee also, which is the Committee of Constitutional Affairs, where we try to get treaty change and where we have to make sure that health, and then of course mental health, becomes also a shared competence of the European Union, so that we can act even more, have more harmonization, more coordination, etc. But I can say the Parliament is very active. We had a resolution on mental health. We are supporting the destigmatization and also helping to get rid of this taboo which is still around mental health. This is also very important. But then also our role is as legislator, maybe always think with everything we do, what are the mental health consequences, like bringing things together. I was very impressed by Jana's presentation, where you said our drug policy, addiction policies are not really linked to health and mental health. So linking things is something but which we have to learn more, getting out of our silo thinking into a more horizontal. That's, I think, our main task now. I'm not a specialist in mental health. I'm very interested in it. I learned a lot today, but I realized that this is an issue, just like Thomas said in the introduction. We have families, we have friends, we have neighbors, we see what is going on, and therefore I think this is not a niche subject. This is a very important subject we're dealing with. And actually every day there should be 365 mental health days a year, because it is getting into all our areas of working, and as legislators we have to keep that in mind. Cut me if I'm too long. You know, we have 1 minute speaking time in the Parliament, so when we have nobody with a hammer, we just go on. And if I go off the subject, don't be afraid to bring me back. Okay?
Thank you very much, Mark, for highlighting the work that is done by the European Parliament, by political groups. Maybe not all political groups contribute in the same way to mental well-being in Europe, but that's another debate. I think it was good to remember that the Conference on the Future of Europe came out with strong recommendation. And too often, I think at the European level, we get those big initiatives that are launched. They say, we're going to listen, we're going to launch. Laszlo mentioned the European Health Union earlier, like we launch, and then 3 years later, it's still somewhere in the shelf of the European Commission. So I think we need to continue highlighting that we have listened to citizens, we have heard their concerns, and this is why we need action, and we have good allies in the European Parliament, that you have the resolution that you mentioned that was adopted, I think, yesterday in Strasbourg. So, and as we talk about participation, it's important to hear from civil society. So, Kadri, you represent Mental Health Europe. Can you tell us about what are your priorities? What are your demands? You have a legislator just next to you. Use that moment. And how do you work with various stakeholders in that field?
Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity on Mental Health Day to address you and to talk a little bit about what we do at Mental Health Europe and what's important for us in this legislative term as well. And I wanted to just pick up on Mark's comments, and so nice to see like passionate people who are like so driven, and that makes the work of civil society organizations also just so much more joyful and hopeful to see that kind of commitment. And the intergroup indeed is a really good point in case where we really see this kind of cross-party commitment and like so many super enthusiastic and really committed people. And also just to say that I think it's important, Mark, you were saying, I'm not an expert. I think it's, we also have to sort of say, we all have mental health, and it's mental health. Talking about mental health is not only talking about mental health problems, but it's really that piece about promotion, but also seeing the links and the protective environment. So that really is at the core of what Mental Health Europe represents, so what we do. So we are a civil society organization based here in Brussels. This year we celebrate our 40th anniversary, and we are a membership organization, and our members are really diverse. So we have really large service providers as members, also mental health professionals, as well as advocacy organizations across Europe, and also individuals with lived experience. So we are very different in terms of what we actually do, but what unites us are these kind of core values and core issues that we push for. So basically, we are also the organization that really looks at human rights and what that means in the mental health context. And I think that's also something that's maybe not as talked about, and within the European context, we don't necessarily see mental health as a human rights issue, but there are still a lot of issues, unfortunately, when it comes to mental health and the services. We are working towards also the elimination of coercive measures in mental health, and this is still a big issue. It's not maybe talked about as much. So we want to strengthen compliance with international human rights standards, notably the International Convention on UN Convention on Persons with Disabilities. There's also an issue around promoting supported decision making instead of limiting or removing legal capacity of people who are suffering from mental health problems, to reducing involuntary treatment and ensuring that services respect autonomy. So that's kind of the human rights component is really important for us as well. And I think as an organization, we really need to keep hammering on that. And then psychosocial model. It was mentioned many times actually today, maybe not directly like that, but what it actually means is that we recognize that mental health is not just an individual issue and just an issue in our brain, but it's shaped by education, housing, income, social inclusion, labor policy, etc. So there's a lot that we can do in improving this protective environment. And I think if you are working on housing policy, if you are working on education, you are also working on improving mental health. And I think that's really important for us to also realize. And then we are also, what really important is obviously the promoting community-based services. We also know that the mental health needs are increasing and they're huge, and the access gap is very big. So what we find important is that there are a lot of different supports available within the community, and that also are these kind of integrated holistic services that we heard today, what you were also saying about addiction support. It's really looking at the person's context and where they are at and trying to solve some of those problems, and not just one single issue there. And also co-creation, the inclusion of lived experience in everything that we do is really important for us, and putting people with lived experience at the center of policy making and service design and evaluation. Peer support, it's a really underused modality that is really effective and has shown a lot of success. And tackling stigma and discrimination, that's still a big issue. I mean, we see a lot of more talk about mental health. I think it's also becoming a little bit like trendy. Young people are talking about it a lot. So you kind of have almost the feeling that we've solved the stigma issue, but then it actually hasn't sort of trickled down to the more severe problems. There's still a ton of stigma there. So it's an interesting kind of paradox that there's more mental health language used for young people as well, but it still hasn't really addressed the discrimination and stigma. And so when it comes to what we would like the legislator to do in this legislative term, and what's kind of also feasible and realistic, I think there's a lot that we can do, and there were really good recommendations already in this paper. So the key one for us, which was also mentioned, is the mental health strategy. And you might say, but we have the comprehensive approach. It's not really what we need, because the comprehensive approach was really important. It was like a landmark to have something like that coming from the European Commission back in 2023. You know, it was announced by von der Leyen in her State of the Union speech in 2022. So obviously we were so excited and happy about that. But at the end of the day, it's you know, there are flagship initiatives, there are projects, and they are sort of combined together. And it is already good to see that there are different policy areas involved, so that's great. But at the same time, it's not a strategy. A strategy is a long-term with political objectives, and that you have an actually binding framework. It's linked to the next EU budget, and there's also a way to for member states to report on progress, right? So you could link this to existing reporting mechanisms like the European semester, but as long as that's not in place, it's not really a strategy. So that's kind of what we are calling for. And then also, there's a lot of things that the EU is doing at the moment in terms of different strategies, like also the social pillar action plan, gender strategy, anti-poverty strategy, etc. They all have a place for mental health. And it's really important that mental health is really considered in those frameworks as well. And then within this legislation, I think it's really important to also tackle the regulation of digital environment, what was also talked about in length now. It's there is legislation in place, like we have the AI Act and we have the Digital Services Act, which are actually great, and there's a lot of good things in there. But how do you ensure implementation of that? And also there's a need for also new legislation, more targeted legislation. So there's also this, I think the key is that digital platforms should actually assess the harms regularly and report on them, like harm audits. And obviously digital literacy is important. I totally agree with you that it's like not the thing we should put front and center. But I think there is work to do around that as well. And then finally, I think it's also very feasible and actually very easy to be more robust about how we collect data on mental health across Europe. So there's a need to harmonize the mental health indicators, to have a good think about what are the indicators that we want to see in terms of like impact indicators in society, but also the sort of indicators of interventions and how they work. So there's definitely, there's a health interview survey, Eurostat, there's plenty of data being collected, but we really need to be more mindful about how we do that. So that's kind of, I think, some of the things. There's tons more, but we would sit here forever. But then on the coalitions point, just very briefly, I think we're well set up actually to do that. And I mean, that also the intergroup is incredible. So happy and so proud. So Mental Health Europe is also supporting the intergroup through a kind of secretariat facility. And so we are also launching the intergroup LinkedIn page today on the Mental Health Day. So check that out. And we also have like other modalities how to work together. So at Mental Health Europe, we have set up a mental health policy hub for civil society organizations who are sort of working on mental health, maybe not as their core issue, but like it's relevant for them. So how to bring ourselves all together and be informed, be on the same page, and have our noses in the right direction. I think that's also really important. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much, Kadri. Mark, I know you want to react.
I just wanted to react to two things. First of all, what you said, that political groups and political parties have different approaches to this, and this is quite right. And you mentioned the human rights dimension of it. And for me, as coming from a progressive party, from the Social Democrats, it's very important to address the social determinants of mental health, including the poverty, the housing issues, all the social exclusion, and there we need socioeconomic policies to address these issues, and that's prevention. And we know and we saw it from all the presentations that €1 invested yields 4 other euros. So this is looking forward, and especially the human rights dimension. I came into politics in the 90s because I was an HIV activist, and I know how important it is, the human rights dimension. It's not only about science and medical, but the whole human rights dimension is very important. And you mentioned it, the strategies we have now. We want to deepen our union of equality with yesterday the LGBTI equality strategy was presented. And here again you see different approaches. Some political parties, when they hear the word gender, or when we do gender mainstreaming or addressing these issues, they're completely against, and therefore it is important that we tackle this human rights issue, the union of equality, but also if we deepen the social dimension of our union, also this is important to protect, to help tackle the mental health issues of our citizens. So that's what I wanted to add. And Kadri, you're right, you put pressure on us, but it's good that you do that, and we have to act and work together.
Thank you, Mark, and we'll come back to this. Kadri, you have highlighted very, very important element, this strategy that is a need. So we really need to make sure that it happens. It's supposed to be in the mission letter of Vice President Minzatu, who is, let's say, a friend of FEPS there, but we will need to make sure that we push for that. Also, so important to stress the human rights dimension, the respect of autonomy, but at the same time being a collective responsibility. Just for an anecdote, I remember in a previous job, I think we invited your predecessor, Mental Health Europe director, I don't recall the name, but she just came to have a chat with the team and to understand, okay, what are the issues? Not only we were an advocacy, a youth advocacy platform, but also how do you do that at the workplace? So I think it bridged what we have been discussing this morning. But coming back to you, Mark, you have heard a lot of demands from my left side. So, and you have read our policy recommendation, as you said. So where do you see, maybe on 2 or 3 of them, room for action in the coming years in the legislative term?
Well, in general, I already see what I like about the paper is that you see we need a differentiated gender approach and also intersectional approach. This is also something very important because intersectionality is a word that tends to disappear in council language. They don't like that. I don't know, some people, the more conservative ones, when it comes to intersectionality, this is something very bad. So this is very good. So I see very much work to do when it comes to what Sara told us on the workplace also, protecting people at the workplace. We need legislation. We need a directive on psychosocial risks at work, and we are fighting for it. Estelle Keulemans, the coordinator from S&D in the Ample Committee, she's a rapporteur on a report on that. She pushes for that very much. And also I know that Vice President Minsatu, our Social Affairs Commissioner, she wants the Parliament to make strong initiative reports so that she can fight in the College of Commissioners to have legislation at the end, because we have enough strategies, roadmaps and papers. We need to come up with legislation. I'm also working on a report, a legislative initiative report on algorithmic management and AI at the workplace. Also here, and the EPP rapporteur from Poland, Mr. Pul, has done a very good report, and he included a directive in it that we need legislation. And now he told us the pressure is coming up in his group that it should just be a few recommendations and no directive. So we have to be strong and push for legislation. And the same in my work in the IMCO committee, in the Internal Market and Consumer Protection Committee, where we worked on addictive design of the platforms, where we have this discussion now on protecting minors online. We're having an excellent report where Christel Schaldemose, she was also the rapporteur of the Digital Services Act, is working on. So there is a lot of things where we can act, and we shouldn't be afraid. We shouldn't be afraid of Trump's pressure, that he puts pressure on us that we shouldn't regulate the tech industry. I'm very sorry that this week we buried the AI liability directive, which the Commission took off the. Wait, sorry, my phone. That they took off of the Commission. How do you say, put in the grave or put in the trash bin their proposal of AI liability directive, which is a catastrophe. They say, okay, product liability is enough. We don't need an extra legislation on AI, but there is no liability against misinformation and disinformation in the product liability directive, and also the gender bias and other biases in AI is not covered by that. So these are things where I see we are trying to please somebody on the other side of the Atlantic, and we shouldn't go there. We have to regulate the tech world. We have to regulate. And sometimes when I have been to business discussions where they say, yeah, if you regulate, you're harming the development, etc. I say, we regulated brakes of trucks and cars to save people. We have to regulate also in the digital world to protect and save our people. We cannot have a Wild West in that world. And we have to explain this to people, explain it. And I will be very blunt now, and I think I will have to get populistic sometimes when I see what the far right and others do. If we will not have legislation, to protect people at the workplace from AI and algorithmic management, I will tell to the voters, there is people in politics who want you to be fired by an algorithm, who don't want you no human-centered AI or algorithmic management. They want that algorithms can fire you from your workplace. And this is something citizens will understand. I experienced it during the campaign when I talked about the Platform Work Directive, which was a big achievement of Commissioner Nicholas Schmidt at the time, to protect platform workers from being fired by an algorithm, etc. And we need transparency in that. We need to regulate it, and literacy comes in. So there's a lot of work ahead, and we have to be very active. And thank you also, Sara, for your and Aida for your insight. It will be very important for the work in the IMCO committee and also in the Employment Committee. So the recommendations are a gold mine. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mark. And you have proven your point that you made at the beginning, that the EU can do something about mental health, and you have just showed a very, very long list of initiatives and the importance of regulation. And this is what maybe we are struggling maybe the most, because we hear it's not even hidden anymore that the president of the commission, she doesn't say simplification anymore, she said deregulation. She said it last week, said this is what Europe needs. So to withdraw everything we have built to protect people. Turning back to you, Kadri, you have heard what the EU Parliament is working on. Are there some of them or other recommendations that you've seen in the paper that for you are, let's say, the most urgent one? Because we have talked about long term, we can't tackle maybe everything at the same time. For you, maybe what's the sense of urgency there?
Yeah. I feel like all the three kind of blocks that you mentioned are super, super important, and I feel bad just kind of singling out one. But I just feel that the digital spaces and regulating that is just something that is the most like urgent, in the sense that it's like a moving target, and it almost feels like, you know, sitting on a galloping horse that you just completely are not able to control, and you are just sort of a passenger. And so it's the algorithms, the AI, the social media, digital platforms, they're just evolving so rapidly, and it almost feels like the place to intervene is also shrinking. It's kind of closing, and it's, you know, we are not only young people, and I think we also tend to talk about this as a young people's problem, but it is, I think, for everyone. This, you know, the addictive loops and the harmful content. I mean, also the impacts on I mean, intersectionality, gender-based violence. I mean, all the gains that we've had, and you just kind of see that melting in this in some of those platforms. And I feel like we have this unique opportunity now with this new legislation. Very unfortunate about this, but we still have, you know, the Digital Fairness Act that is still ongoing, and we have the implementation of the existing legislation to, you know, really build the mental health safeguards in that, and into the sort of digital transition itself. Before the whole system becomes too entrenched to change. I think that's the worry, and that's why I kind of feel like this is maybe the area where we need to act. I also wanted to mention the AI in mental health services in particular, because I think that maybe it was mentioned but not really elaborated on. This is something that, as Mental Health Europe, we've been looking into in recent years. So we have a publication as well on mental health and AI, as well as digitalization and mental health. And so we really look at the AI solutions, because in recent years, it's also, I mentioned the sort of service gap, right? That there is this and it's increasingly a pressure sort of that the AI will solve this service gap, and that AI, and, you know, it's the next best app will solve all our problems. And it's just very annoying. But also, I think this obsession with innovation has led us to this point where innovation means like some kind of digital platform. So like even like in Horizon, if you see those calls, it's like this obsession with digital platforms that will last for 4 years and that are meant to, I don't know, compile different interventions. But then it's like, but the interventions don't exist. You've got to first create them in the community and then develop a digital platform. You know, sometimes it's just so absurd, this kind of, but they are written into those calls. So you have to have that component. And it's very frustrating because it's not always the answer. And so when it comes to AI in mental health services, so you have different types of uses. You have the maybe I'll focus on the two, so the sort of digital therapies and then the phenotyping, or the collection of data about your sleep, about your sort of heart rate, about you know, your moods even. So when it comes to these digital therapies, there are also, we know, you know, ChatGPT, and people use, especially young people use those as well. And so on one hand, we also have to sort of be realistic about the fact that young people are online. they are also, there's studies done that show that they are actually much more likely to reach out for support online. So we also have to sort of build on that and also realize that, okay, this is the reality. How do we manage that? The problem with these kind of AI solutions is that they are like a closed loop. So there's no like referrals, there's nothing sort of that would help come out of this loop, because the AI systems are usually built on like sort of validating whatever you say, and it can become like completely out of proportion. I mean, there's also very dramatic consequences reported already of suicide because AI bots have sort of encouraged you, and so that's obviously the extreme cases. But I think, how do we do that? How do we sort of have something and solutions where you do actually get directed to humans? Because no AI solution will ever be able to mimic like empathy, human connection, and the sort of professional decisions, or it's very flat. So I think it's really important to say that it is, we have to use the fact that young people are online, and I mean other people as well, obviously, but there are so many risks. And also with this digital phenotyping, like how do we know this data, which is like extremely sensitive, is being used? Like, who is it being sold to? Is it being passed on to like insurance companies, and then in the end, it will be very difficult for you to take out an insurance, or to government agencies? Like, the risks in terms of surveillance and unintended use are extreme. So I just wanted to also put that in there, because it's often sold as like AI and digital will solve the service gap, and we are very, very pessimistic about that. And yeah, so I think the digital regulation is really, really key, and also working with people about understanding, like, so digital literacy is not about like putting the onus on the end users, because I think it was said so beautifully also, it's so much stronger and bigger than us, that we are just not able, it's just to sort of ourselves regulate. But I do think that it's important to teach children, but also other like older people about how digital environments actually impact our behavior, our emotions, and to have those conversations, so that it becomes like a culture like we have with separating garbage, or these are things that are already like part of our behavior and culture, and we've accepted that. And even privacy, right? Data privacy. Now it's like a norm. We all know, we are all kind of like wary about that. If people take your phone numbers or something, and the paper is lying around, we all feel like, what's this? But like, 10, 15 years ago, that wasn't the case. So I think it's also about having those conversations, and teaching children like what that actually means. Like, what are you exposing to? Do you want that? And like explaining this. And just very final note, why this is so important, because I think we do have an opportunity to create safe environments and more ethical digital environments, and use that opportunity to have something positive that actually contributes something to society, and create these kind of cultural and behavioral shifts as well. And I think this will lead to eventually like a reduction of mental health distress, but obviously this is a longer term game. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much, Kadri. Effective plea, because you're already triggering reaction from the MEPs. So
you're motivating me so much. No. I mean, you should always speak first, because you give us so much food for thought and food for speaking up. And when I listened to you, and I remembered the presentation I was at last week, where a young mother said, I was taught by my mother and my father, don't talk to a stranger. Now we tell our children, don't talk to a chatbot when they interact with AI. This is something, I just wanted to highlight the work of one of my colleagues, the Spanish socialist MEP Laura Ballarin. She has now launched a website which is called sharetoprotect.eu, where parents can tell the stories which they witness with their children, how they had problems with internet and what happened, you know, and there's also scientific research on that. But I think these are personal initiatives also of MEPs, which are very good and which are very important. And I want to tell you another anecdote which I was shocked about. I was at a lunch with a Greek lady in the European Parliament. She has a quite good position, and she told me the story that on a Friday evening she came home after a heavy week. She was cooking. She's a single mom. She has a boy of 17 and a boy of 14. And she said, "Hey guys, can you just help a bit?" And then they told her, "Hey mom, this is your task." And she got really shocked by that. And then the little one came to her and said, "Yes, Mom, we are following Andrew Tate now on the internet, on Instagram. Andrew Tate is masculine, is this influencer." But then she sat down the whole weekend with them. They watched it together, and she could discuss and recuperate. But she told me if this had been gone on maybe for 2 years, 3 years, she wasn't sure if she could get the kid back. So it is the whole literacy, and it's these websites and these influencers also. That's why we have to also regulate influencers and see what they do. They can create harm, they can help, and this is exactly what you said, and what AI what happens with the chatbots, etc., and also the algorithms, and I think we're only realizing what is going on there. So the work you do is good, and also the academia.
Thank you, Mark, for also sharing those, and Kadri again for highlighting so many things on literacy. Like it's often interesting that we focus so much on the literacy of young people, as you mentioned. But I think we all have a great uncle on Facebook that will share you this information and invite you to spamming games. But also the obsession of innovation, the burden on innovation. I don't want to be innovation nowadays because I need to solve the climate crisis, the mental health crisis, and so on and so on. So I think it's really important that you've mentioned the questions of culture. We are, with what we are doing, with what's discussing today, we are trying to create a new societal culture which is grounded on well-being and respect and human rights. But I know we have a very eager audience, maybe to ask questions, to intervene. So first, maybe a round of applause to Kadri and Mark for their initial inputs. But now we reverse the roles, and we're gonna hear from the audience. And we have mentioned the work of our experts that led to today's recommendations, and we have 3 of them, and I think it's only fair to hear from them first to react. And so I would like first to give the floor to Sophie Porber from Headspace Denmark. The floor is yours, and the panel is yours.
Thank you so much for the invite, and thank you all for coming, but particularly to both Mark and Kadri for your reflections. A quick clarification, as Francois said, I work for Headspace Denmark. That's not the app. Everyone thinks that we're the app. Headspace Denmark is the largest mental health promotion and prevention organisation for young people in Denmark. And I suppose I just have a couple of comments really picking up on what has been spoken about already. So Headspace offers, there are 2 main pieces of work that we do. The first is early intervention counselling for young people. This is mostly face-to-face, although we also have an online chat function, but that is also with real counsellors, not through AI. But I think just picking up on the sort of obsession with digital services that you're speaking about, Kadri, and not needing to always be innovating and having something different. Young people tell us when they come to counselling at Headspace, which is actually with volunteer counsellors who are not trained professionals, it's that social connection that they get. It's having someone that they can talk to openly in a judgment-free environment where they can share their experiences. That human connection that they're taking away from that interaction seems to have, the biggest impacts for them. And so it's a relatively simple solution that doesn't require, development of digital platforms and complex sorts of settings, but that young people are telling us really, really works and helps them. The other thing I think that I want to pick up on is the importance not only of prevention of mental health challenges, but actually of actively promoting positive well-being. And Kadri, you spoke about having this sort of protective environment. And I think this is something that we're thinking about a lot more at Headspace Denmark. So we also do a lot of work with schools and youth centres and other places that young people go naturally in order to promote positive well-being and help them to kind of manage their own experiences in, you know, the plethora of experiences that we expect everyone to have in their lives before it gets to the point that they actually do need to step out and seek help. And I think I want to emphasize that the health sector, or even the civil society sector that is adjacent to the mental health sector, can't do this alone. And I think maybe speaking about the role of the European Union, even if much of the health work is the responsibility of member states, it's the importance of mental health being and mental health promotion being really centralised in all policies, and that it has to be in our socioeconomic policies, it has to be in our employment policies, because this is where we're really going to sort of enact that societal change before the health sector and the formal mental health sector is having to intervene for people who are experiencing more significant challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sophie. We'll hear from the other two, and then we'll let Kadri and Mark react. Now we'll hear from Antonio Molina Fernandez from the University of Madrid.
Really? Oh, thank you. Sorry, I've got to stand. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think there is a privilege to be here today, and I'm really impressed because the things that we have been talking and you are discussing, I think it's quite important, especially not only today. I think that every day we have to talk about mental health and addiction problems, and the perspective that you are offering for me has been, I have taken a lot of notes, but I want to put the focus in different aspects. One, I don't think that in Europe the problem is the legislation. I think we have got enough legislation. The problem is how the legislation is landed into the practice. I think that we have equity legislation, but not all the women with the children have got clear access to mental health facilities or to mental health programs. I know that we have got a clear legislation about social justice, but it's true that not all around Europe social justice is now being understood in the same way. So I think that the problem is not now the legislation, we have enough, but how they are transferred to practice for practitioners, but also for the population, also for the families, also for the people with Mark has mentioned intersectionality, and I think is one of the proper ways to understand the phenomenon. Other thing with the legislation all around Europe is that we need dynamic legislation. Frameworks are changing, problems are changing, so we can't use some kind of frameworks, legal frameworks from 2013, from 2015. So it's important. And I want to react to a thing that Francois said. Sorry, Francois, please don't be worried. No, because it's true that all the groups are contributing, but they are not contributing from the same perspective. It's not the same to contribute for a balanced cost and benefits, talking about mental health, that contributing about how can we improve the life of people, contributing, as Kadri said, from health promotion, health education, early detection, early intervention, and they need investment. So it's necessary to invest money, but also, and it's curious because most of these European projects must include the topic, also they have got this social return of the investment that we can't know about. So it's important. And also another thing, and with this I want to finish, and also Kadri said, is not that we don't have to talk about only the clinical issues and factors related with mental health and addiction. Why there are more people with mental health and addictive behaviors in urban areas than in rural areas. Why there are more people without job than with job. Why there are more people, why? Why all those factors, why all those social and cultural factors are affecting. So we are not talking only about, as Kadri said, the individual issue, the individual factors, the individual protective factors, and so on. That's for sure, we have to work it. But we're talking about much more, about environmental enrichment, about social aspects, about cultural cues. We need determine what were we talking when we're talking about mental health. That's it. So that's my suggestions. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Antonio. And now we hear from Virginia Mailleux from the Center for Future Generations, and then we'll hear from Kadri and Mark, and then we'll open again to the audience because I see you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to have been contributing in this. I mean, I think this is such important work, and it's phenomenal that it's getting the attention that it deserves at the moment, which is really, really great to see. So I work at the Center for Future Generations, and our role is to push the conversation further, forward-looking into the risks that are on the horizon. So if I may use this fertile ground for discussion, I'd like to plant a couple of seeds of things that we see coming that I think we need to already be baking into this conversation now. And they're both very related to this kind of techno-solutionism that you mentioned, Kadri. So first off, obviously, artificial intelligence, we've heard a lot, obviously, already about it being used as a therapist, as a proxy for a therapist, and also the algorithmic management. But again, AI is reshaping every aspect of our lives, just like the internet and social media did before. And that also means that we're using it in schools, we're using it in work day in, day out. We don't yet know what it means to actually outsource mental labor to an algorithm. And so there are increasing fears about the fact that actually these new technologies might be taking something away from us, actual critical thinking skills and cognitive abilities and emotional resilience that we might need for our mental health. So that's a risk that experts have been flagging that we're not sure what it means yet. So it's something to watch out for, especially in the workplace and especially for young people, of course. And then the other thing that I want to flag, so I lead our work on neurotechnologies. Neurotech is a very broad field, but I just want to highlight a trend. There's actually jumping on this mental health trend at the moment, the wellness sector has been very active, innovating a whole bunch of new, very easily accessible and very affordable brain monitoring devices. And soon this is a headband, but soon we'll have them in headphones, earbuds, watches, glasses as well. And they're very much aimed at helping improve sleep, helping improve focus, helping reduce stress, meditation, productivity, all those kinds of things that we deal with day to day with our mental health. But obviously, that's great, but there's obviously some pretty big risks associated with this first. I mean, you mentioned that, is a digital solution to our mental health really tackling the underlying problem, first off? And secondly as well, a lot of this innovation is happening in the consumer space, which means that it's happening outside of medical regulations and outside of clinical oversight. And we've even been told it's a wild west out there in terms of regulation for this very quickly growing space. And then finally, this kind of data that these devices are collecting. I mean, this is mental data, this is brain data we're talking about. It's some of the most sensitive and intimate data that we can generate. And right now our regulations are very complex, very fragmented. We have a lot of them, but it's not clear how this data is protected, especially when it's outside of a clinic. So those are two topics I'd like to just make sure that as we're having all these discussions now, we need to make sure that we're already anticipating those upcoming technologies and what they could mean in protecting what we care about.
Thank you so much, Virginia. A lot of food for thought and to be a bit scared of. But now I give the floor to Kadri and Mark. Or do you want to react to this? You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Really good comments. Thank you so much. So, yeah, on the sort of innovation point, I wanted to still also mention that I don't think we should say I think we need innovation, but I think we need to be more in control of what is the innovation, what do we see as innovation. And what I see in the mental health space as innovation is actually looking at things that maybe we have been under addressing before. So for example, you might be familiar with this, the pyramid approach or the step approach of intervention. So you would have at the top, you have this very specialized psychiatrist. Then you have other therapies, psychological, clinical psychologists, and then you go as the lower you go, you have the community-based supports, different peer group supports, what a colleague from Headspace also mentioned, this kind of early intervention, very low barrier. It can be in forms of art classes or whatever. So many different options, and there's this kind of a thinking that, you know, it's not evidence-based, but there's plenty of evidence that it works. So I think innovation can also mean, you know, having the courage to say, okay, what we have been doing so far, you know, focusing on the top tier, hasn't worked, and it's not cutting it. It's not going to be what makes the huge difference with the growing needs. So we're not, you know, are we going to just do more of the same, or are we going to look at maybe some of the other layers that we are not investing as much in? And that's also innovation, right? So I think we should reclaim innovation and, you know, give it a different meaning of like peer support and early intervention and promotion of well-being. And on the legislation point, I do agree that we have indeed legislation and what's like how to make it real for people. And I think there's just one word, money, onto it. And I think how to enforce and how to make it real is like to put it in the multi-annual financial framework, in the EU budget, and anchor this with enabling conditions, earmarking for the things that we want to see, and like make this as a political priority. So the member states have to, for example, if we are serious about deinstitutionalization, in the previous MFF, there was also an enabling condition so that community-based care would be prioritized. These are the things that actually have the potential to work. You know, if we want to invest more in these like community-based low thresholds care, put that in there, like put an earmark or an enabling condition for that. And that's I think the kind of easiest way how to actually make it reality. And indeed, also huge regional differences. So we have to look at, you know, what's around us and what are the impacts, because we see, for example, Eurofound did a really good study recently, and it shows that death by suicide is now the leading cause of death for young people ages between 15 to 29, with massive regional differences. But like there is something in there that we also need to examine and question, and yeah, so I think there is definitely work to be done to zoom out a little bit and not just the individual and quick fix.
Thank you so much. Mark, what are your thoughts?
Thank you very much. Sophie from Headspace Denmark. We had a presentation of Headspace in the Parliament recently, and I was very impressed. And what you say, right, is this human interaction, which is so important. This low threshold spheres is where you can get access easily is very important. And I know it also in my previous work, as I said, as an HIV activist and also LGBTI activist. Community-based centers, community can help a lot. Peers, working with peers, and this human interaction. And I can give you a very concrete example. As a Crester of the European Parliament, I'm chairing the anti-harassment committee, and we focus a lot on prevention and we're developing the so-called confidential counselors, and more staff members can become confidential counselors, and which is good. You have confidential counselors on every level, from the lowest pay grade to the highest pay grade to directors, because then you find somebody on you can easily access them, and this has helped a lot the work of prevention. So this human interaction and easy access and just that you don't have to write emails, or where you can just go to a person and talk. I think this is very important. Antonio, yes, we have a lot of legislation already. We have a lot of legislation in the real world, in the analog world. That is true, and not always well implemented. We should work on that. But, you know, I believe in the principle, what is illegal offline has to be illegal online. And we have a lot of legislation to protect people offline. But online, there is a big lack of legislation. And here we have to work on, and that's why I come to Virginia, which is very good, that we have people who work on foresight, who see what is coming up, what are the trends, how should we react. And therefore, I think anticipatory governance and future fit legislation becomes important. And the work you do in foresight is very important, and I regret that we don't have in each parliament a committee of the future, because Finland has it, some countries have it, or put a lot of weight into foresight, because it shows us politicians. There is the next elections coming up. There's much more coming up to make us think, a bit further. So I think that is very, very, very important. Coming back to Antonio, you're very right when you see that the environment, the area where you live, what we said also in the very beginning, if you live in a place where there is good public services, where there is governance which takes care of people, it's much easier than if you live in a place where they don't do that. And this is what I'm, just to conclude very broadly now, what I'm so worried in Europe now with this whole deregulation agenda, and people who want to make Europe just come back to this single market. Economy and businesses are important, but the 450 million citizens who live in that market and who work very hard in that market, they are becoming secondary, and that's a very bad trend. And therefore I think the paper which was produced here by FEPS and the work that many of us in the European Parliament who want to balance that and really also say Europe needs a social dimension, because as we said, everything is intertwined. So so thank you for your input and food for thought, and then food for action.
Thank you, Mark. Maybe just self-FEPS promotion. We just also published a paper on intergenerational solidarity a couple of weeks ago. So linking to the discussion on the future generations, we can also link with what we are doing today. Now I'm turning to the audience as well. So I would like to invite two people to take questions, and then I will take one question from the online chat. So please have the floor and then introduce yourself and encouraging short question statements.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yulia Paskevska. I'm from Ukraine, but based in Brussels. I'm PhD in psychology and also present the head of Association of Psychological Support and expert council of Europe of Strasbourg. And really we pay a lot of attention to human rights. That's why thank you very much that you mentioned about it. Very important points, because mental health can't be without human rights. And I worked more than 20 years in Ukraine with mental health and in Minister of Health, and now in Minister of Justice also we provided a very interesting program, prevention burnout, professional burnout for prison system, for the staff who works in prison system. And this is really important to share it not only on this system but other things. It's about well-being, it's about mental health, human rights. And my question is very interesting, like practical idea. Legislation is very important at the main things, because we can discuss a lot, we can say a lot, thinking a lot, but if it's not based on legislation, it's sorry, nothing to work. It's just a little bit service, maybe some high-level quality can be, but everything have to be approved by documents, by some specialization things. And my question, if it will be possible, what do you think? In every company or organization, I don't know, in human resources department have to be the position, for example, mental health specialist, because now we look like in Minister of Health and Minister of Justice that okay, everybody can go to human resources, but human resources department works only just normal typical things, not according to well-being, not according mental health. That's why it have to be directly, and I don't know, maybe special regulation have to be which directly show this is position have to be in each department or in each organization. What do you think about it? It's practical idea, just to thinking, yeah.
Thank you so much for your question. Another question from the audience? Yes? Ifa?
Hi, my name is Aoife. I'm the communication officer here at FEPS. I think more importantly on the discussion on social media and how people access social media is also those who work within managing social media channels, particularly on behalf of organizations. For instance, I know with algorithms and leading out a different strategy for every single social media channel is that algorithms change nearly weekly. So for us to keep up to date with the content that we produce, it requires also keeping up to date with the algorithms that are changing all the time. And the transparency in those algorithms that we work with is also a major problem. So when, for instance, the Instagram CEO releases it in his personal Instagram channel to what changes what we can do to make sure our engagement and monitoring and consistency, what we can do to sort of improve that. But that changes every week from a personal Instagram channel. There's no transparency at all with it. And I think that on behalf of managing social media channels, it's super important that what we can do to ensure the transparency of algorithms so that we can communicate with people more clearly. Because that for me is super important if we're coming to understand how these far-right influencers and people who prey on younger people to be able to maximize their engagement and their social media presence to ultimately earn money is not transparent at all. And we cannot understand what they're doing. Most of the times as well with social media channels, you have to pay to break that algorithm, to be able to move into different areas in which people are not engaging with you. So for instance, we post on behalf of FEPS, research. So it's people who are interested in research. How do we break out of that? If we want to say, for instance, not that I listened to someone speak from this particular platform who said that this was the way to break the algorithm. But if we wanted to post it on Facebook, the only way that we can do that is to pay them to be able to talk to different communities and engage in different age groups, different genders. So ultimately, if the only way that I can talk to someone digitally is by paying a platform that's not based in Europe, who is allowing young people to be preyed on by these influencers to earn money, I'm not going to pay them. But how else do I talk to those people? How else do I know what algorithm, what parts of the algorithm, or what even shape the algorithm works on, to be able to talk to them, to be able to break through that? So that's, I think, what my question would be in terms of like looking at algorithmic transparency for those working in social media, because that's ultimately what we need to be able to talk to them to break through that.
Thank you, Aoife. And so we have first a question on person responsible for well-being in companies and workspace, question of transparency of algorithms. And from the online conversation, I have something around that there's so much polarization now. Do we have backlash on feminism and against also progressive values? So how do we break as well that conversation, making mental health a priority? Can we integrate this question, the mental health consideration, into the Critical Medicine Act, which is also on the menu, and ensuring that attention to psychological well-being alongside physical health? So this is something also. So we have three blocks of questions. I don't know who want to go first.
Okay. Thank you very much. Of course, it would be great if in every HR department there would be somebody responsible for mental health, etc. But what is important is also that we have as much as more possible collective bargainings. And in these collective bargainings, negotiations in social dialogue, we have the well-being issue at work, which starts with office space, with light, with you know how everything is organized in a company. This is very important, and therefore I'm happy that we had this directive on decent minimum wages in Europe, which is not only about minimum wages, but also which sets the standard that 80% member states should reach 80% of collective bargaining. Unfortunately, this directive is now under attack. There will be a judgment coming out on the 11th of November. We hope that it will stand, because it's important that that collective bargaining is strengthened, and this is issues we can deal in this collective bargaining. When it comes to transparency of the algorithms, etc., sometimes I work on a report on all this on the workplace, but it scares me sometimes. I have the feeling somebody explains to me something, and then the next day it has already changed again, and it's all new again. So this is something where again foresight comes in, and it's like, should we? this is something which is very difficult and a very difficult question to answer. I just, if I'm well informed, tomorrow is the 10th of October, and Meta will not allow political advertisement anymore in Europe. So we cannot. Now we had a tag where we can, as a politician, we have to be approved by them, and we could pay for political advertisement. This will be forbidden, which can be good because the far right invested so much in that. But now it's also on us to shape, and progressive people, and we also have to be active and bring real information in, not disinformation, bringing progressive content in and trying. But I'm not expert enough to know, can that influence the algorithms, or can these companies again find tricks to bring far right or business pro-business positions up or not? I can answer to that. And the last question, the one was a difficult question which I didn't really get. Maybe I have to read it and then I'll come back, show it to me, and then I will come back after Kadri, or I'll leave it to her.
Thank you, Mark. So the last question was about, in the current context with the backlash on feminism, progressive values, and so on, how do we make really mental health this priority, breaking this, and maybe should we use it in the Critical Medicine Act? Do you want to quickly react on this, or? Yeah.
As I already said, defend the union of equality, not let this backlash happen, and also here we need legislation. We have to put women's rights in the fundamental chart. We have the right of free and legal abortion. We have to put it in the fundamental rights charter. We have to make legislation to protect LGBTI rights. We have to continue in protecting and deepening the rights of persons with disabilities, etc., and not go backwards, and stand firm, and that's why I'm happy, and we fought very hard. Remember, in January the Commission also was putting in the bin the horizontal anti-discrimination directive, which was blocked in the Council since 2008, and they said, okay, it's blocked. So, and there was a lot of pressure from civil society together with members from the European Parliament. And this week it was announced it was a few weeks ago, it was announced by President von der Leyen and by Commissioner Hadja Labib that this directive is on the agenda again, and that the Danish presidency is also very keen on working on it. And I hope that this horizontal anti-discrimination directive will become a reality. And the Critical Medical Act, I'm not aware. I'm not working on this, so I don't want to talk about things where I have no clue about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Kadri.
Yes. Thank you very much. On Julia, I think, yes, you were talking about the sort of responsibility of companies and workplaces. I do think that there are good examples already in certain countries. I'm familiar with the Belgian legislation, and it's interesting because there is already something in place. Even for smaller organizations, you have to pay for a service that's outside, which is called like psychosocial secretariat or something, and basically it's to address psychosocial risks at work. But it's interesting because this was already, I think, like in a different employer that I was working with, and I was actually developing a well-being policy for the team, and I was looking into what exists, and then I was like, but this exists. Like, we're actually paying for this service, and employees can actually, and this is obligation, like legal obligation, can call in also anonymously, like if there's any kind of mental health issues that they have related to their work or conflict at work, and it's a very low barrier, so you can just call them and we just get the bill, anonymized, but it's not really visible. Nobody really talks about this. Usually it's like in some of those like internal policies, but it's extremely boring how it's framed. Psychosocial risks at work, and then like it's in a way in a language that nobody recognizes themselves in it. And it's really funny because when you then dig in and actually talk to our, like, so you have a designated psychosocial advisor for your workplace, and it's like support to people, and the employer pays. And so that was just like a revelation. This already exists. So I think we need to be a bit more clear to people and staff members, like what are the options out there, and see where we can create more. But yeah, just it's not perfect, but there is already legislation in some countries. So maybe it's also a way to sort of build on that. And then on the Aoife, you were talking about these algorithms and the game, and should we play this game? And it's, what an issue. You always like drop the bomb. It is really difficult, I think, for everyone to make those decisions and have those conversations. Like, it seems like you're like stuck in this hamster wheel and just playing the game, and for what, and is that actually ethical? And I don't have an answer for you for that. I think I think there was much more conversation when sort of Twitter turned evil. And I think there was like a big conversation about, like, should we be on that platform? Should we go somewhere else? And it felt like a big momentum in, like, okay, do we need to like rethink how we communicate our message and to whom and why? And I think that kind of died its death somehow, and we're like back to the place where we were, or even worse. And so yeah, it's something that, thank you for raising it, because I think as a director of an organization that should really pay attention as well, like about, you know, ethical engagement with some of those platforms that are actually causing harm. Yeah, so it's a homework for me, I think. And also on the backlash, actually, very shortly, yesterday, a dear friend from Amnesty actually said this, and I thought it was just so hopeful and so just, I needed to hear that. She said, you know, the backlash that we're seeing now on human rights across the world and on feminism, it's because we've made so many gains. It's because we are like achieving progress, and it was bound to happen. And so we've got to like sort of weather it out and just keep going. And if the progress is slow or it feels like slipping back, okay. But like, we've got to be persistent. So yeah, just ending on this thought.
On the backlash, the problem is that those who organize this backlash, they frame the progress you've mentioned. They say it's ideology, but the progress is just that we progress in human rights, because women's rights. When you defend, I'm a feminist. That's not an ideology. That is defending women's rights, which are human rights. If you defend LGBTI rights, you defend human rights, and there's nothing to do with ideology. But they frame it. The backlashers who want to bring us back into patriarchy, they frame everything is ideology. Everybody is a leftist now in the parliament. When these far right people, they insult even the colleagues from EPP as leftists, and I think, and that's how they become successful. And this is where we really have to. And there is of course a lot of money involved in that, and we have to also get organized better and stop this backlash. But yeah, it is a problem. It's just to tell you a very personal. I was this week a lot in the plenary also, because there was some interesting subjects, and when you're so present in the plenary, you realize on each topic the far right, they said the same thing. On certain things they stressed more the gender, and then on others more the Green Deal, but they said 4 things. Green Deal is bad for Europe, gender, and I don't know how they managed, but on every discussion they framed their 4 points, and there I realized, oh my God, yeah, this is, and then they repeat it, of course, on social media, and it's like repeating, and this creates a lot of backlash, and then people from the center tend to agree with this, and this is what worries me a lot. Sorry, this was my frustration from this week.
Thank you, Kadri and Mark, for addressing those questions. We still have time to take inputs from the audience. I had seen a hand raised there. Yes.
Thank you. Hi, it's Irene Ventroni from Uni Europa, the graphical sector, and I was wondering, we talked a lot about white-collar type of workers, but what about the blue collars, as automation and AI are working a lot on those workplaces? I wonder if we have looked at that and what are the impact. At the moment, we're also looking, for example, at young worker who might want to join a sector and might be a bit more aware and might want to understand what are the protections for that, from work and life balance to also how we manage technology on the workplace. So I wonder if you have encountered this and if there's any work done on that.
Thank you very much, Lena. Other question from the audience? I know that also from online, there was a question that's addressed a bit by Mark already about the work in the EP. So you mentioned that you work as Quester, but Thomas, what are your questions?
No, I probably address the question to both speakers because I think that we also need to integrate the mental health issue in the whole health debate taking place. Maybe if you can think how, because we have some opportunities also. The Commission is working on the cardiovascular health plan. There are other important health-related discussions. How to really make this intersectionality and holistic approach work in terms of narrative, in terms of accenting these links between different health issues, and lastly, where to look for partners to do it. Who can be the partners for raising these issues?
Thank you, Thomas. So blue collars and a broader health perspective. Okay, Kadri or Mark?
The last question is, we are humans, we have a brain and we have a body, and both have to function. If the brain doesn't function, well, the body has consequences. So it's all interlinked. And again, personally, I had a big knee issue a few years ago, and I got really... Suddenly, I'm a very happy person, but then it affected me, and I said, "Oh my God, I cannot visit cities anymore. How do I walk? This is horrible." And the other way around too. If you have mental issues, mental problems, you just have to see that it can be treated, and it has to be treated. And it's like, my knee was treated very well. I had a knee operation. I had a good treatment. So now my knee is better and my mind is much better. So when we talk about health, this is body and mind and everything. It's one, and we have to keep that together. The white collars. I've been in the European Parliament. We're very active in the employment committee. We wanted to have hearings with people from Amazon, because we've met with the trade unions, workers from all over Europe, from the different, we organized last summer a day where we met in Spain, in Italy, in Germany. All our socialist MEPs went to trade unions, and we met these people who work in these distribution centers where there is cameras, they're controlled, there's seconds, how far. This is also very, very important that we monitor that, and we don't even know if some of the software which are used in some companies, in some factories, if they comply with European legislation. So this is again something we have to be very, 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 very working on it. And here foresight again comes in again. So we are aware of that. These working conditions in some of these factories, they become. Some people get problems with their bladder because they are afraid to go to the toilet because they will lose seconds. It's really, I've heard from one, she said, I wear Pampers at work for adults. It goes as far. If you talk to these workers and they tell you how it's not easy, and we have to address these issues too, especially in those fields. And again, there is a platformization of work, the platform economy. Now we know it only uses deliverers and other jobs, but in many jobs in the future, restaurants, when they need when they know, oh, the weekend is more work, they go on a platform, they'll have waiters, they have dishwasher, people who come and wash the dishes, etc. And therefore we have to protect all these kind of workers from technology and from algorithms. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Very final comments. I think indeed the physical mental health and looking at this holistically is super important, because the narrative has been like mental health at par with physical health, which I find quite funny, because we are one human, one health, and everything is so linked. So I think that it also seems a little bit passé to talk about it like that. So I do think that, what has been said in the different conditions, physical conditions and issues, they have a link with mental health. They can either, protect or undermine mental health, and vice versa. I think also, the basis of nutrition, exercise, sleep, they are fuel for a healthy body and mind, and it's all linked. So I think how to sort of move in the health space on mental health would be indeed to really focus on the One Health approach and have mental health not only, and I notice your imagery is also very brain focused, to maybe move beyond that and not look at mental health only something to do with the brain, but more to do with our bodies and functioning and life around us, our relationships, everything. So yeah, on the specific sectors, and it's really interesting. We haven't really looked into that specifically, and I'm curious if there is work done around, the specific risks of different types of labor and also income and all that again plays into the different risks that we experience at work. So yeah, would be curious to hear more about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kadri, and also for pointing out the issue of finding a good picture to represent this project. We have struggled with the colleagues, with our communication colleagues, to find how do we do that? How is it not too gender oriented? And work in progress. But it's very useful to hear. We also read online that it's really important that we need to name what are the drivers of the state of our mental health. It's about fairness, it's about respect, and those are very fundamental values. I think that are good to wrap as well this conversation. I'm just looking, one last chance for a question. Aida, go for it, and then we wrap up. It's coming.
Thank you. It's just a final comment. It's on those platforms which are based on some values that we really don't share. I mean, like when you hear about Amazon, what they're doing, or all the large platforms which are not European. And I think maybe the solution, like looking forward, should also be that we should have something that is also aligned with our values, instead of that we rely on foreign platforms that have something else in mind.
Thank you, Aida. Mark, Adri, one last comment maybe to react?
You're absolutely right.
Adri, one last word? Well, I think that's a good call to wrap up this, that there's a lot of work to be done, but first of all, I would like to thank Kadri and Mark for their very great interventions and the time that they've taken. So a round of applause for them. And now we can wrap up. Also to thank all the participants to this conversation. So before we wrap up, and that you have time for a good lunch, because I think we had a lot of food for thought, but now it's time to move on. So I think we can say the last few words. I believe from our partners from the Institute for Rational Addiction Policies, to get the name right, I think we'll give the floor to Jana for a last word.
Thank you very much. Apart from working at the university and advising in the Ministry of Justice,
I lead a team of experts in the Institute for Rational Addiction Policies, because there's nothing better for mental health than juggling 3 jobs just to survive in late-stage capitalism. I don't want to bore you for long, but yeah, we try to merge the topics of mental health and addictions to create comprehensive regulation in these areas. And maybe I will leave you on an anecdote from our Czech governmental council. It was maybe 3 years ago, where the first report, national report on digital addictions was presented by our National Monitoring Center. And there was a Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister said, after hearing the alarming numbers about children problematically using digital platforms and also social media, he said, okay, so that's good. At least they're not taking drugs. And we were like, okay, maybe you're not realizing what we are just saying to you, but this will become a big problem. And I feel like we've heard a lot about what is coming and what will not disappear without our action. And I hope to see you soon again, and to see us going together for that action that needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jana. And last word for me until you can go for lunch. Just on behalf of FEPS, to thank you all for participating today, for bringing your insight, your stories, your learnings. Laszlo, our Secretary General, earlier said that the work doesn't stop today. So first of all, take the recommendations with them, spread the word, challenge them, question them, and make sure that they lead to something, to strategies, to legislation, and ultimately to improve the society in which we want to live in. Next steps for work of FEPS has been mentioned. Copenhagen for Call to Europe. If you're around, we will have a discussion working with Headspace Denmark as well, where we will have a focus mainly on young people in the workplace. So this is something to put in your calendar, 29th of November in Copenhagen. But hopefully more to come in the next year, expanding our work not only on mental health, but to have one health element, one health approach to work that we're going to do, and so many topics. I think that worth so many research that we have heard today. And last but not least, I would like to thank not only, again, all the speakers and the authors and the experts that have led to today, but all the people that made that this event is a success. We have Rodrigo, who is ensuring that everything is going well technically, online and here in the room. We have Aoife and Morgana from our communications team. We have Yiri, who has been also a key actor in this project. We have also our colleagues who are not in the room, who are making sure that you're going to have lunch. We have Sophie and Louis that helped in the morning. We have Javier, who have been taking lovely pictures that will be published, and last but not least, a big thanks to Julia, our project coordinator on this. So enjoy, have a good Friday, a good weekend, and let's continue working and putting people before profit. Thank you so much.